Golgari Midrange. It's running Virtue Persistence. It's got just this Mosswood Dread Knight as a recurring threat. You've got, a classic go for the throat, cut down package of removal. Trespasser for a little bit of graveyard hate. Checking out Lord Skitter as a mid-range threat. It's got some Tenacious Underdog and Liliana. Glissa, which is going to be pretty good for us on defense. And, First Strike Death Touch is just a powerhouse of a card. And then, Virtue is the go long, payoff. And then we also get 4 of the Restless Cottage, 4 manlands in Golgari. So I'm excited for that one. This one was created by Ashlizzle, who is a content creator. Don't know if you know her, but she's pretty awesome. And so she created this Rakdos Anvil deck. And the Rakdos Anvil deck is really focused on making Sir Ginger huge, right? Because the Anvil, you create a 1/1 that you sack, and you just kind of loop this over and over. So Sir Ginger gets a +1/+1 whenever an artifact you control is put into a graveyard. So Sir Ginger can just get out of control. We've got Agatha's Soul Cauldron, which works really nicely with Ginger Brute because you can take anything exiled with Agatha's Soul Cauldron gets Ginger Brute's ability. So you can then give the activated ability of can't be blocked except for by creatures with haste to something a little bit more threatening. And the other issue with Agatha's Soul Cauldron is getting things into the graveyard in the first place, which Ginger Brute and Braids sets up quite nicely. So there's some fun synergies in here. Also running the Charming Scoundrel, and Gumdrop Poisoner is a new one. Create a food token for Tempt with Treats as an instant, and then it's a 3/2 lifelinker that you can pay. If you sacrifice the food token and then play this as a 5-drop, it's a 3/2 that gives something -3/-3. So very good removal. We've got Obnixilis, just an amazing planeswalker that creates a copy of itself, and then you just end up putting all these devils into play, and then making them discard cards or lose 2 life. And then you can ultimate, if you do get there, to draw 7 cards and lose 7 life. Usually you do that to just kill your opponent. Thrillseeker is a nice little backup synergy. Gets into the graveyard for doing Agatha's Soul Cauldron. Gives you another activated ability that you can hit. And Harvester, we've seen this one forever, right? And Charming Scoundrel from the red deck. Go for the throat. 2 damage, or classic removal. Hopeless Nightmare is something that's kind of fun because then you can sacrifice it to trigger Braids. So that's a fun little synergy that I'm really excited to explore. You got the Voldaren Epicure, which has always been in the Rakdos sack deck, and then Ginger Brute is back, right? So Ginger Brute seems like a great thing to put in the Rakdos Sacrifice because it's a 1-cost artifact, so you can use that to start getting the loop going and then do the shenanigans with Agatha's Soul Cauldron, and super cool synergies. So that one's option number 2. Number 3 is a beginner-friendly one. So the third deck that we can vote on here is a budget mono red deck that is exclusively Wilds of Eldraine commons and uncommons. I do not expect this one to perform terribly well on the ladder, but it's always nice to have a budget option. So we've got Embereth Veteran, which is just a 2/1, but you can sacrifice it to create a young hero role. Harried Spearguard, which is a 1/1 that when it dies, 1/1 haste that when it dies it creates a rat token. We've got Monstrous Rage, which is the +3/+1 and trample for 1 red. We've got Torch the Tower, which is the shock. You can only shoot creatures, but you can also deal for 3 if you bargain. Tattered Ratter is a 2/2 that gives all of your rats +2/+0. Ratcatcher Trainee can create the 1/1 rats or is a 2/1 first striker. Grand Ball Guest is a 2/2 that, as long as you've triggered Celebration by playing 2 non-land permanents in a single turn, it gets +1/+1 and trample. So lots of good aggression there. Then we've got Gnawing Crescendo, which gives all of your creatures +2/+0. And then if they die, you get to create a rat creature token that replaces them. Then we've got Imodane's Recruiter, which has been a top-performing Mythic uncommon in the set, at least in Limited, so I'm really curious to see how it does in Constructed. And we've got Witchstalker Frenzy, which I think is going to be the new answer to Shieldred over all three of the deal 5 damage in red Nahiri's and I'm blanking on the names, but you get them. Like, I think this is going to be this is going to see constructed play. And then we've got Hearth Elemental, which is basically in the deck for a little bit of late game. You can use this to draw 2 cards for 2 if your hand is empty. So I played this during the midweek Magic, and it was a lot of fun. Hope everyone has their pencils out. Option number 4 is by InterruptorJones. It's a Mythic, it's a deck somebody used to hit Mythic in best of 3 that has the mono blue shell. Couple of changes from what we've seen before, but I mean, it's very classic. Haughty Djinn, play a lot of spells, get them into the graveyard, play a lot of counter spells to deny what your opponent's doing with Make Disappear and I think Essence Scatter. Not Essence Scatter in this list, okay. But they replaced the Dig 4. God, what's the name of it? Merc, you can help me out here. Look at the top 4 cards of your library and replace them. So they changed that one to Moment of Truth, which I really like. I thought it was a really good substitution because it allows you to look at the top 3 instead of the top 4. But most importantly, you can put stuff into your graveyard. You have to put 1 into your graveyard. So this can get you 2 spells in the graveyard, which is really important for making Djinn into a lethal threat and to making Tolarian Terror even cheaper. So I wish I could remember the name of what I'm blanking on, but the one that is in my budget list, looks a very similar card, but it looks at the top 4. And then we're running March of Swirling Mist, which is really nice. You can use it to remove blockers for Djinn. You can use it to stall if they have lethal attackers. This has got 3 Spell Pierces, which I'm not familiar enough with the best of 1 meta versus the best of 3 meta. This might be a little bit on the heavy side for mono white and mono red. So I think in best of 1, I would be tempted to change this Spell Pierce. But then we've got 3 Sleight of Hands, which is a new card from Wilds of Eldraine that allow you to look at the top 2 cards of your library, put one of them into your hand and the other on the bottom of your library. So excellent dig. We've got 3 Fading Hopes to remove some of that aggro. I think we should probably be up at 4 in best of 1, but we'll see. And then, yeah, no Essence Scatters, so just relying on making sure to counterspell their key plays with Make Disappear. And then we've got Thirst for Discovery, still a great cycle for Djinn. And then 3 copies of Flow of Knowledge. This is another one that I messed around with a little bit, and I'm not sure if I like this in best of 1. But I would be willing to give, be willing to give this a shot and see how well it does. And then we have 2 Horned Lock Whales, which is another new card from Wilds of Eldraine. It's you can play it for an instant adventure, Lagoon Breach, where you can bounce something into the top or bottom of their library. So it's like a more expensive but slightly better Fading Hope. And then you get a 6/6 flash, ward 2, it enters the battlefield tapped, but like still this really great late game threat. So that would be option number 4. This one is by Cardakeys. This one is your classic Atraxa deck. And it's got, I have yet to play the 5-color or 4-color Domain Ramp deck. So you can see I still need to craft 4 Topiary Stompers. So I'd really like to check out the Domain Ramp at some point. And this one was one that looked like a pretty good list. And we've got Iron Crag, which is a new one from Wilds of Eldraine. And it's a 2-cost mana rock. So of course it's going to be great in Ramp. We've got 3 Up the Beanstalks, which is a new one from Wilds of Eldraine, that whenever you play a card with mana value 5 or greater, you draw a card. So great at cycling. We've got the Ossification and Topiary Stomper from the previous versions. Invasion of Zendikar is still in here, really useful for finding those lands. Sunfall, which is kind of, you ramp to Sunfall and then try to restabilize. And then we've got Leyline Binding, which with this many lands in the deck is usually a 1-cost flash removal spell. Absolutely amazing. Herd Migration is how you survive against mono red, cycling for the 3 life. And we're kind of foregoing the Archangel, the one that ends up with the lifelink, and running Cityscape Leveler instead. And I don't know if this is a best of 3 thing, or if this is just where cardakeys wanted to go for it. I do think that like the Archangel of Glory, or whatever it's called, that can deal 2 damage, has been really good at surviving mono red in best of 1. So if the leveler isn't really working out after the 50 games, we could always check it out with something else. But then we've got Atraxa, and Atraxa is Bay. Absolutely amazing. Is a mono white humans list. So the person who came up with this, and this is specifically for best of 1, their name is a ridiculously long string of letters and numbers, so I don't know how to say it, but basically we've got the classic mono white humans list, which has been doing very well in standard for a long time. I did a full review of this one earlier that was easily the top performing deck prior to Wilds of Eldraine. But we've got some new inclusions, so I don't have 3 copies of Restoration of Ganjo? No way. Okay, well, anyway, that's not a new card. One of the new cards is Werefox Bodyguard, and this one is coming in, I think, to try to kind of give the Cathar a break, right? So Brutal Cathar does a very similar thing, except for it doesn't have flash, right? So this one is a 2/2. It's an Elf Fox Knight, though, so it doesn't have the human synergies. But then you can exile up to 1 target non-Fox creature until Werefox Bodyguard leaves the battlefield. And you can sacrifice it and pay 1 in a plains to gain 2 life. So I don't know if this was just to kind of feel out if it's better than Brutal Cathar or worse, but so that's their addition here. 3 Werefox Bodyguards, and then we also get 4 Virtue of Loyalties, which is you can do it a 1 and a white instant to create a 2/2 white knight creature token with vigilance, and then for 5 you get an Anthem that at the beginning of your end step put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control, and you untap those creatures. So a much stronger mid to late game going on here. We've got 4 Mishra's Foundries, 1 Mirrex for against the control matchup, 15 planes, and 2 Aganjo. Very excited to see this. And if you're curious about the mono white humans list, you can check out the video that I posted earlier. We did 50 matches, and it was amazing. It had like a 75% win rate. Boros aggro deck here is kind of... There's been a Boros aggro deck that I showcased in my budget list that is kind of centered on, like, it's called Boros Heroic. And this one is not really that, right? It's not really focused on putting everything onto one thing. So this is kind of like a hybrid shell, right? It's got a lot of the human synergies, but then we've got Immodane's Recruiter, which is a top performing uncommon. So I'm very curious to see how it performs in Constructed. And we've got Raging Battle Mouse, which hasn't been performing very well in Limited, but I think has the ability, or, it has the potential to be pretty good in Constructed. So other than that, we're just kind of playing good red and white cards. Spellbook Vendor is a new one from the set that is basically like a Luminarch Aspirant, but you can't do it multiple times because the creature can only have 1 sorcery roll. So you kind of like cap out on the +1/+1, but it has been an impressive card in Limited. And then we've got some just human synergies, splash red for some other humans that came in with Wilds of Eldraine, like Harried Spearguard, 1/1 haste that when it dies you get a rat. And then we got Felden, which is a human. So this is just like Boros humans instead of white humans, and it might be worse with the inconsistencies of the red mana, but we do get Witchstalker Frenzy as a payoff and Reckless Stormseeker. So I'm really excited to see how this Boros aggro deck performs as well. So that's option number 7. We got the Izzet aggro deck. So the Izzet aggro deck is created by Ben Weiss. I think that's how you say his name. Sorry if I screwed up his name, but amazing pro player. And they created a blue-red deck that I found on Twitter that looked very appealing. And basically we've got Scalding Viper is one of the new cards from Wilds of Eldraine. We've got Lightning Strike and Play with Fire and Stoke the Flames, so just a ton of burn straight to face, right? We've got Phoenix Chick, Swift Spear, Kamano, and then we've got Scamp and Sawblade Scamp. So we got some Scamp synergy going on here, which is kind of cool. Because if this can deal damage to the player and then sacrifice it, you can use it to proliferate, and then the proliferate can end up giving you additional +1/+1 counters, but you probably don't want to do that. So it's just kind of played as a 1/1, which is like, should this be a harried Spear Guard, or am I missing it, right? But you can sack it to deal its damage twice, right? So if you like Monstrous Rage into the Scamp, you get a 4/2 that can then sacrifice itself to deal an additional 4 damage, and you can deal that. It's almost like double strike. So I see where they're going with that. And then Sawblade Scamp is a 1/1 haste that whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you put an oil counter on it and you can tap it, and so you've got this kind of like 1-cost catapult that I think works pretty well with a lot of the cheap spells that the deck is running. And then we've got Thran Portal because we don't care about our life, and it's like the easiest way to fix the slight amount of blue that we're playing. So basically it's Izzet only because of Scalding Viper being an adventure for blue. Otherwise it's just a mono red list. So it's a bit of a stretch to call it Izzet aggro, but this was one that caught my attention and would be really fun to play it. So that one's option number 8.